Welcome, everyone. Ed Reason here. And today we're going to talk about your operating system. And I have a special guest in the studio, my producer, JoeBoy, who happens to deal with computers and operating systems all the time. So who better to help walk through this than someone that does it all day long? JoeBoy, thanks for joining us.
How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you?
I am alive and running.
Awesome. It's a great day for everyone. And when we're talking about operating systems, it's really important is how we function. I mean, why do we do the things we do, the decisions we make? And sometimes we're cognizant of them, and sometimes we're not. But how do we get in a place where we can really understand ourselves? And our operating system is very, very important to that. And when we're talking about our operating system, it's how we view ourselves, how we see ourselves based on our past experiences and the things that have happened to us that all influence how we operate, our childhood, how we were raised. Sorry about that. How we were raised.
My childhood wasn't good, Ed.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to talk about it because like all of us, we've all had challenges. And, to hear from people that are real, that are in touch with themselves, they found out something in their own past or something that has had a major influence on them, it can maybe help one of the viewers or yourself to see something in a different light through someone else's experience. And I think that's really, really important because we're all just regular people. And having someone that can maybe speak into you based on their experience, I think is very helpful. So, JoeBoy, kind of tell us a little bit about your upbringing and kind of how your operating system may be working right now.
Well, if I went back to how I was raised, my mom was a single mom. My dad left when I was, third grade? So it wasn't the best experience ever.
It had to be tough.
And not having a dad kind of sucks. I did get to meet him in my 30s, and that allowed for some closure and some stuff. My mom was very religious, and I grew up with a lot of what they call church hurt. We have a lot of where the church was saying, everything's great, your family's wonderful, everything's great, and they had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. I lived in a hoarder house, which was pretty much full of stuff from top to bottom, and everyone was supposed to live at home forever and just give mother all the money. And that was just not the way that it was supposed to be, but I didn't know that. I thought it was normal, and I didn't realize there was a problem until I was 23 years old.
And that's the issue a lot of times with our operating system, and we had spoke about this earlier, is that sometimes you don't know you're living in dysfunction because you're functioning in your realm. You're functioning what seems normal to you. And sometimes it's really not. And so we build our identity. We build sometimes our future and our outcomes come directly from this operating system. And again, I'll relate it to computers. If you have an original computer and the software is good, it's uncorruptible, it's wonderful, it's going to work perfectly. Now, if a bad program gets in there, like upbringing, a hurt, an injustice, something that's happened to you, it starts corrupting that operating system. Your program starts to go bad, but we don't know it. And it's a progressive thing. It starts to build. A program becomes worse. It becomes worse. And pretty soon it's not even operational. And now you're functioning in a dysfunctional situation that's not helpful. It's definitely not going to get you to your goals. It's definitely not going to get you where you want to be. And that's a lot for anyone. And JoeBoy, I feel for you. I understand that. I've had some, and we share different ones in different ways. And when you talk to people, sometimes, and this is what I'll take from a good standpoint, is that we look at our problems and we think they're really bad. But a lot of times, if we stood in a room and we piled all our problems in front of us and we looked at everybody else's problems, Sometimes we probably take ours instead of someone else's, but it gives us a lot of perspective. And I can't, and this is why I wanted to hear from Joe Boy, is because I can't speak to that. I've never been in that place. I've never seen that. Now, some of the things about church hurt, I can relate to that, but the other things I can't. And so I want to know that perspective better. Kind of tell me more about that, because someone's going to identify with that.
Well, when you're in an environment where you think it's normal I was literally working 6 jobs and going from one job to another to another. I was waiting tables, I was working Home Depot, I was working Olive Garden, and I would work these jobs, go from bicycle from one place to another, and then give your mother everything because that's what you think you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be the provider. And my brother got to go to college, and my brother got to go to a nice school and all that. I found out later on that because I was working and because of what had happened, I was actually awarded a math scholarship, which my mother turned down and gave to somebody else. I had no clue. So it actually set my whole life behind, because I could have had a college education. Instead, I didn't. Now, I did okay, don't get me wrong, and I have overcome these obstacles. But they are things that got in my way of getting where I wanted to go. I had a lot of ideas, but I thought it was normal. I didn't even know it was a problem, Ed. I thought it was normal that I was supposed to stay at home forever and give her all the funds I ever did, and just if I ever found a girl, move her into the house with mom and it'd be fine forever. That's what I actually believed. Can you imagine that?
I get that. And again, we only know from our perspective of what we've learned and what we've experienced. And sometimes that dysfunction becomes normal. And that's I see it. I can't really envision that from my perspective because I've not been in those shoes. But I can see how that can really set someone's trajectory way off. And, you can hear that. I'm not saying maybe a current hurt, but a hurt always stays with you. It may not be currently hurting, but it stays with you. You overcome it over time for sure. And you've done an awesome job, become quite the man in what you've been able to overcome that hurdle. It's unfair. And I had some instances where, I can go back to some of my siblings that they shared some instances that were really hard. And sometimes we hold our parents responsible, and they are responsible for sure because they did the action, they have responsibility. But for me, where I kind of came from that is that sometimes hurt people, and they don't know because they were raised in a dysfunction. They didn't know. So it became for me as a point of, I can't have expectations on my parents that they were unable to fulfill. And that doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make it right. And sometimes a parent over time, and this is as a parent as well, is that you can go back and you may not be able to fix it, but you can tell that child or that sibling, you know what? I was wrong. I didn't know better, but let me try to do better. Let me try to be better. I'm a better person now. Let me try and make that right. Now, that certainly doesn't get rid of the hurt. It certainly doesn't get rid of the pain. And it leaves scars that we never heal. But again, I kind of like to take it back to that positive side. Wherever there's been a scar or there's a heel or something has mended, the mend tends to be the strongest part of the person. And it sounds like that's what has been the a driving force in your life because it propelled you forward in maybe ways you may not have gone. Now,
I've
tell me more
used
about
that. I will tell you, all my siblings have chosen not to have children because they didn't want to pass this negativity on. I was the only one who decided to have a son, and I've worked very hard to make sure not to follow the same circle of madness of what happened. And I try to teach my son to be independent. I try to teach him how to make a living. And he's a 13-year-old kid who actually has his own show and does a lot of things. And he's a great bowler. And I'm teaching him, no matter what, focus on positivity in the world, being a positive influence, and not letting things bog you down. Now, I took a while to reprogram myself and to change my quote unquote operating system to be one of success, to be one that is being productive and efficient. And I think most people don't realize that you will always fall back to that original programming. And I had to literally re-look at my life and admit this is what happened, this is where it's at, and I don't want to pass that forward. So I'm going to rewrite my instructions so that I can have a better positive outlook.
And that says a lot about the person, because that is really, really hard. It's very difficult to go back and try and rewrite that program. It should have been right the first time. And it was until people messed it up. But to go and be able to change that speaks a lot to character. That speaks a lot to that internal drive that says, I understand what happened, and whether it was good or bad, I have to move forward. And the people that are around me, I have an influence on, and I can have an impact on them. And I choose to go a different direction. Now, a lot of people would have taken that hurt and turned it into hurting other people. And JoeBoy didn't. He turned around and said, you know what? It wasn't right. I didn't deserve that. I deserve better. And so, you know what? I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. And I'm going to learn how to do that. And that's part of what we want to do here, is we want to kind of give you ways of learning how to rewrite your program, how to re-see things in a different light. You can't fix the past, but you can mend it. And by that, we can change the outcomes. We can do that. This is possible. Again, all it takes is that desire. JoeBoy had it. I had it. A lot of people have it. But sometimes you don't have a good program or a system to make that happen, which could make it much easier. Now, you may get there, but how much better or easier could it be, or how much of the outcome could be much more improved if you have that operating system? I think that that's something that we can do for people, and I would really love to help do that. And I know that by working on it, and he has worked on it, I work on it. That's part of what we're trying to do this for us, to show you how you can be that person you were meant to be in spite of all the hurdles and all the things that happen to you.
Well, the first thing I did is blame. I blame my mom for everything. Everything that went wrong, I said, hey, I can always blame my mom because she did this. And I mean, we had crazy stuff that happened in my life. I mean, at one point, all my belongings, everything I ever owned as a child, was taken and left in a parking lot at a college. And I was told if I want my stuff, I'd have to go get it. And I was at work. And by the time I got there, well, she took off, but there wasn't really that much left for me to enjoy and have. And so I still kept one piece. I keep a piece of wood. And this is a piece of wood that was part of my desk. And that stays in my backyard as a reminder of the trials and tribulations I had. And that none of it matters. Actually, what matters is what I do and who I am as a person and how I choose to react. I can't control other people. I can only control myself. And that was a real realization. It made a big difference.
And see, those are great teaching moments. And again, it's very, very hard. I'm not going to minimize that. But we all suffer hurts. We all suffer injustices. If we cannot permeate those onto other people, we cannot reproduce them in ourselves onto our children or those people we encounter. And it's very, very hard not to. I get that. Someone cut you off in traffic. I'm guilty of that. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, and the first thing you want to go off and you want to act. Well, that allows that person that power over you to steal your peace. They change your countenance in a moment. They don't have that much power. So the awareness part that JoeBoy had, that I had, that you can gain, that awareness that you develop, you start to say, okay, this happened. I have to be aware of that moment. I have to be aware of that fact. Now I can choose to do differently. Most of the time, things happen to you. You're not even maybe cognizantly aware that it's happening, and you're just reacting. And if you can just take a couple of seconds after something happens to think, wait a second, maybe there's a better way. I always say, and I've learned to stop, maybe count to 5, breathe, lower your temperature just a little bit. You see things a little bit differently. And as a child, that's not possible. You haven't learned those skills. But as adults, we can now. But what this will allow us to do, this will allow us to put this into our children so that we don't hurt them, so that they don't hurt their parents. We can be better parents from the worst parents that we had or the situations that we were in. And JoeBoy's a wonderful example of that. He's done wonderfully for himself. It's been a struggle, but that struggle has made the character who he is. So in spite of the bad things and the hurt that you can feel it, you can see it. It's still, even as a man, it still lingers to this day. And it has an influence. It may not weigh as heavily because he has chosen to see differently. He has chosen to do differently and have a legacy that most people don't really understand they can do. But we're going to try and get people to develop those skills. And again, it is a skill. It's a practice art that anyone can do.
Here's the key, Ed. I really think it's important that people understand that just because it happened to you as a kid doesn't mean it's the way it's right. It doesn't mean it's the way you need to bring on to your family. And we are taught stuff as a kid that may even be outdated. I mean, if you go back in time and take a look, not even that far away ago, you look at the 1920s, we had, the society had a completely different view on life. I mean, just racially, just, so many different ways, our lives are completely different, and parents were teaching children these rules to live by that have changed over the years. And I think your audience needs to realize that part of this is one of those obstacles that you have to tackle if you want to move things in a positive and be successful.
Right. And that's what I said. What I would say is that the purpose of this show is to get you to see things differently. Not my way, not JoeBoy's way, but your way. And finding helping you with our process to find that way, to know how to step forward, to see things differently, because you don't make your decisions like when he was a teenager. The decisions he makes, the thought processes he had, the things he believed, as opposed to now, are completely differently. So I think you have to be really aware, and this is part of that awareness that everyone needs to have and develop it, is that when something happens, what do I do? And that awareness gives you pause, because you will not make the decisions as an 18-year-old as you will as a 30-year-old, as a 40, a 50, a 60-year-old. Wisdom, time, and experience. But if you do not lay in good patterns of behavior that allow you to develop positive reinforcements that get you in the direction you want to go, you could be reinforcing bad behaviors. As JoeBoy said, maybe his mom didn't know. Maybe she did, and it's all on her. We can't reach in someone's mind, but I think you need to give people enough grace to maybe assume that they just didn't know. And sometimes,
I blamed my dad for a while. I blamed him, but then again, I was blaming other people.
Right.
And one thing I've learned, and it's one of those coffee cup moments where you put something on a coffee mug, and I'll tell you, the way I look at it is the one common denominator in all your failed relationships is you.
It's you.
And once I realized that, the only thing I can work on is changing me.
You can't change other people, but you can change yourself. And a lot of times we spend our time looking outside of ourselves instead of inside of ourselves. The answer is within you, not within them. And when we hold these grudges, and I've been guilty of it as well, and I've worked on it a lot. I've done a lot of time trying to be more forgiving, and it is very tough. I will tell you that. It is very hard. But a lot of times when you hold those grudges, what's the old analogy? It's like you drinking poison and expecting them to die. It only corrodes you. It only hurts you. in the long run, you will be diminished, not them, because they may not know. My other analogy I like to use, and forgive me, I use a lot of analogies, it's like there's people that are so burdened with so much trash, and they're driving around the neighborhood and they find a place to dump their trash. It just happens to be your place. It's not your trash, but somehow you take responsibility for it. These are people that are just dropping loads. They don't, whether they mean to or don't, whether it's intentional or not, it's not really relevant. It doesn't matter. It's not your trash. You don't have to assume it. Don't take that burden for yourself. And again, parents should know better. But how many parents went before, JoeBoy, before you were a parent, who trained you?
Kids do not come with an instruction manual.
That's right.
I really wish they did, okay? Changing diapers was hard enough, okay? Trust me, the first time that thing went flooded, hit the TV, I'm like, oh my gosh. So really, I wish they came with an instruction manual, but they don't. I will say I learned over time. You learn from what your parents teach you, and then materials and how you self-teach yourself. How do you get materials? Luckily, we're in an age of the internet, so there's so much more available to get to. You're able to watch YouTube, watch videos, get materials and books, and hey, you can even watch Reason Speaks, right?
Well, and again, this is about changing my mindsets. It's about getting us forward to seeing things differently. Again, I don't want you to see my way. I want you to see a different way because your way is already obsolete going forward, like all of ours are. We're always going forward. We're always changing and looking for new ways of thinking or seeing things different. New information changes outputs. And sometimes you can take some different output or take some different input for a different output. It's always hard when you'll hear somebody and from their experience, you know exactly where they are, but you know exactly where they are isn't where they're going to end up and will not get them to where they want to go because you have that clarity of purpose. You've been down that road. So how can you help people to say, maybe stop and see? And this is where it's harder when you have children because you've got this experience. You've already done these things. You can see what's ahead of them, but sometimes even telling them, don't do this. Sometimes people just got to experience it for themselves. And for me, that's the hardest thing is that, why are we so resistant to learning from other people's mistakes? Sometimes we just have to test it for ourselves. What's the old kid is don't put your hand on the stove. First thing you do is put their hand on the stove. I told you. Well, that's kind of, I'll give you that one. I've been at a place and they bring a hot pan to you, maybe fajitas or something on a pan that's hot. Now, don't touch that handle, it's hot. And the first thing you want to do is grab that handle. It's like wired in our brain. It's craziness. So it's kind of a psychological factor, but we have to, again, it's awareness. Stop on our actions just for a minute and think, is there a better way? Am I seeing this clearly? Get input from other people, trusted people. Listen to things. Assimilate as much as possible. Use logic and intuition. Remember, most of this is the reason why we don't do it is we're afraid. And fear, as we've talked, is a very powerful motivator.
Ed, did you know everything on the internet isn't true?
Since when?
I know. Once I realized that my operating system might not be true, it gave me permission to change it.
Well, a lot of times, and this is part of it, is a lot of times the information out there is intentionally meant to corrupt your operating system. I know, it's hard to imagine, but it's true. Most of the information you get out there isn't good for you. So you have to be able to stop. Put wise counsel around you. Listen to things that reinforce the truth. Kind of step away from things that are trying to take your time. They're stealing your time. And stealing your time is stealing your life. You can never get it back, folks. You just can't. I learn, and I'm still learning. And every day I find out just how dumb I am by the things I learn. But being aware and being open and available to that learning is a powerful, powerful tool. Your past can influence your future. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to have sway on you. So no matter what your hurts, no matter what unfair things have happened to you, Don't let that carry your future forward. It's not worth it. You're better than that. You have more in you. Learn, step back. And again, there's processes that are in play. You can put processes in play that will guarantee your outcomes. But
And
you
I
have to
assume
want
you
to.
want everyone to know to make sure not to pass negative reinforcements and to look for more positive reinforcements, right?
Absolutely. And again, sometimes we have to be able to step back and say we need to be more positive about this, because small words hurt, especially people you love, because the people that you love really take things to heart when you say it. And even I remember small things that people said to me that I didn't realize hurt, but they do, because I still remember them. And if they weren't that important, I wouldn't have. And so remember, be a little bit kinder. Step back just a little bit. And it's very hard, but I know you can do it. You guys are great. And remember, if you like what you're hearing, please take the time to like and subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified when new content comes out. We're putting out new content all the time. We're going to have guests. Again, we always ask for people that if you want to be on the show, you have some valuable input, you want to be able to reach out to us, and let's share it. Let's make this better for everyone. So like and subscribe, hit the like bell, watch for new content as it comes out, and know that we're here to make a difference. Our website will be having plenty of material coming out on how to take these steps, how to walk through them. We're talking in generalities to now, but as we get, like JoeBoy, he brought a specific thing up. Great to hear. We're going to
Thank you for having me on the show. I know that not everyone wants to talk about these kind of subjects, and it's something I think it's important, being able to talk about the obstacles that are in the pursuit of what you want to do, and I think that's awesome.
And I think it's really, and not in a condescending way, I think it's very brave to do that, because hurts that are left in the dark grow. Lies and things that are kept in the dark, things that you're hiding in the dark, will come to light. But when they're in the dark, they're punishing you. The sooner you get them out and you expose them to light, they will disappear. They don't carry sway on you any longer. So be willing to address those hurts. Get them out there and say, hey, here it is. It frees you instead of carrying that burden forward. Again, you deserve more. You're better than that. And if you learn the right operating system, you can get there. Reach out. We're here for you. Love having those conversations. Like and subscribe. Next time,